Now, former President Jacob Zuma's sentencing and incarceration has been met with mixed reactions. While some have welcomed it, others are not happy and taking matters to the streets. Protests calling for the former president's release have led to violence, vandalism and looting. Zuma has been vocal about the judicial system, at most times criticizing it. His lawyers are currently fighting for rescission of his 15-month sentence. Now, political analyst Tinyiko Maluleke says the country has contributed to the current version of the former president. Let's bring in the Prof now. Prof, thank you so much for making time. You make an argument in your opinion piece that all of us helped co-create Jacob Zuma. What do you mean?
Well, I mean that, we were all there when Jacob Zuma rose to power in this country, and quite a sizable amount of us were cheering him on. We were, and when I say we, I don't mean you and I personally. I mean metaphorically and collectively. We were outside court when he stood trial and was acquitted of rape, and we have accompanied him to court every time ever since. I mean, his is a story of unlikely success, and it tugs at our heartstrings, because here is a rural man born of poor parentage, who misses the chance to go to school, ends up in Robben Island, and eventually becomes president not only of the oldest political organization in the country, but in the continent, and some would say one of the oldest in the world. So it's quite a remarkable story, this of Jacob Zuma, and many South Africans couldn't resist this story, and I think that's why we are where we are. And there were times when even agents of law enforcement bowed their heads in recognition of this amazing story. I mean, 2009, when Mukote Dimche said he is dropping all charges for no real reason, so we really have to take some responsibility, both in creating him, but also in supporting him. Now, many of us will either say, I supported the ANC, not Jacob Zuma, but how do you distinguish between the two? Some will say, I stopped voting because of Jacob Zuma, and maybe by stopping voting, you enabled him. So I think we just need, as South Africans, to take responsibility for where we are, and not merely think that if we point fingers at one man, it solves all our problems, because then we'll do it again.
Yeah. What role did the ANC play, Prof? And maybe you can even include here Thabo Mbeki, the former president. What role did he also play in this co-creation of the former president?
Well, the ANC played a huge role, because it is the ANC who, basically enabled South Africans to vote for itself, and in turn the ANC gave us Jacob Zuma as our president in Parliament. The story of Thabo Mbeki and Jacob Zuma is almost legendary. At least the two books that exist that are anything like biographies of Jacob Zuma, one by Ronnie Kasrils and the other by Jeremy Godin, both of them speak about the amazing longevity of the relationship between the two, over 30 years of working together. And of course, how the two stuck together throughout the negotiation years and saw themselves as part of the same team, and how Mbeki chose him to become deputy president of the party. So that is another part of how we have come to have him as our deputy president. And the rule goes that deputy presidents become presidents one day, and it happened with Zuma too.
Yeah, you argue that the former president doesn't only live in Nkandla, but in the consciousness and imagination of many South Africans. How do we then exorcise, as you say in your article, the Zuma out of us as South Africans?
It will be a tall order, because part of the reasons why it will be hard for many South Africans to exorcise Zuma is because many South Africans are still stuck to the politics of Messiah, the politics of one man or one woman who, with a sleight of hand, will solve all our problems. It goes back to Nelson Mandela. It goes back to our struggle songs. So our politics of personality is one thing that we need to grow out of before we can grow out of our enamorment with Zuma. So I think we need to outgrow that. We also need to reach a stage where we, tone down on our dependence on politics and political leaders as South Africans, that they alone have the solution to our problems, and see ourselves as political agents in and of ourselves. That way, we will be able to grow out of this embedded imagination of Jacob Zuma, the Zuma within, if you like, the Zuma within us. It's not just the Zuma in Jacob Zuma, it is the Mandela in us. For some, it is the Cyril Ramaphosa in us. We need to outgrow all of that and become agents of our own change and our own future.
Yeah, politics of personality. Prof, before I let you go, we are expecting President Cyril Ramaphosa to address the nation this afternoon on the ongoing violence, looting and criminality. He spoke last night indicating that the police have to take a tough stance and respond to the criminal elements. What do you expect him to say? What can he say to the country showing leadership?
I expect him to call for calm, although it's a little bit late to ask for calm, at least in some areas of the country. But if we can limit the unrest to those areas and find a way of quelling the unrest there, all the better. So he will call for calm, I think. He will also promise that, the people who are being violent in their protest will be dealt with. And I hope that something is done. And I'm not calling for violence from the side of the police. I'm just calling for proactiveness from the side of the police. I mean, the social media is full of statements of people who sign in their own names, calling for the country to be burnt down and calling for violence. Those kinds of things I expect him to say the police are acting on it, because it's one thing to call for the country to be burnt down in peace times, but when people call for the country to be burnt down when the country is being burnt down, the police ought to act a little more than they have done so far.
Yeah, and some of the people that are calling for that violence are not actually active participants in the looting and the protests. So they are chilled at home and they're just inciting violence, and it's the people on the ground that are carrying that out. Prof, thank you so much for making time to chat to us. And some people may argue that the president did, in fact, call on the police to act against those that are perpetuating violence.